Jackson. So. Welcome in. We are back for another exciting episode here with SODFS. I am Dan. You can find me on Twitter at Dan Brown NFL. Here with me tonight is my co-host, my usual operating partner here in the DFS game, Nate. You can find him on Twitter at Nate_FFL. We're back. We're talking Week 9 main slate here, talking Draftkings. Nate, what's going on with you, my man? Good to have you.
Well, we are halfway through the regular season of NFL football. The trade deadline happened this week, and I remember tweeting out early in the week. I said, nothing of relevance will probably happen, and I couldn't have been more wrong. So the week leading up to the show has been very exciting. We've been changing things as we lead up to the show, and it's been a very entertaining week. The NFL season itself has been extremely entertaining, so I'm excited to talk some NFL DFS with you today, bud.
Yeah, man, I'm excited. Last week was pretty good for SODFS. I'm hoping we can do a little bit of repeat process here for Week 9. I want to take a minute to mention that Sons of Dynasty and SODFS are officially part of the Fantasy Points Premium Media Group. Make sure you guys check out all of the great content that Fantasy Points Premium Access has to offer. Use promo code SUNS22 and you'll get 10% off your subscription today. Nate, let's talk about some of those Week 8 guys that we did so well on this past week.
Yeah, we did have a few misses here and there, but a lot of the misses that we had were guys that we even said, guys like Josh Jacobs and Kenneth Walker, that we said they're due for a bad game, So it did happen for a few guys. The guys that we did hit on were guys like Jalen Hurts. He scored 28.4 fantasy points. Tua Tagovailoa against my Detroit Lions had a great game, 32.8. Kyler Murray scored nearly 30 at 29.6. The King, Derrick Henry, bouncing back to his greatness at 31.8. Alvin Kamara finally got a touchdown and put up big numbers, the biggest numbers on the main slate at 42.8 fantasy points. Tony Pollard, as we predicted, without Ezekiel Elliott, did very well, 36.7. Tyler Algier, 17.5 for your Atlanta Falcons. Not a fantastic game, but it is priced at 55 or 5,600 that it was last week. He certainly hit value. Tyreek Hill, another part of that Miami Dolphins offense, along with Jalen Waddle. Hill scoring 34.5, Jalen Waddle scoring 36.9. Fantastic game for both those guys against my Lions. DeAndre Hopkins came in at 36.9. The Cardinals are surely very thankful to have him back in the mix. And DJ Moore, a guy that was very underpriced at 5,300 that we definitely went hard on the show about, came through, granted late in the game with that late touchdown, but 30.5 Draftkings fantasy points, putting up big numbers at sub 6K.
Yeah, man, we were talking about that Tua double stack again last week, and if you happen to buy into that propaganda, it paid off nicely. So we're looking to find that again this week. Maybe it's Tyreek Hill week again. DK doesn't want to price him up. The guy's about to put up 2,000 yards this season, and DK doesn't want to price him up. I'll keep going back to that bag. I know we're going to talk about him here in a little bit, but we got 6 teams on bye this week. That's Cowboys, Steelers, Giants, Broncos, 49ers, and the Browns. So, obviously this is a bye week hell for a lot of our dynasty leagues, a lot of our redraft leagues. And here in DFS, it just kind of, lightens the load, condenses a little bit of the ownership towards those top plays. But there's still a lot of good plays out here today. It's a little light at the quarterback position. Running back feels super deep, and some great wide receiver options up there at the top. I'll be punting tight end as per usual, but nothing changes as far as that goes. Nate, anything about this slate in particular that you noticed when diving in?
I think you nailed it. You said the word that the slate is condensed. It's very condensed, which makes DFS harder because the pie is smaller to pick from, and there's going to be higher ownership on a lot of the guys that, we want to play. So it just makes it a little bit tougher. But we have guys for you that we think can set you apart in those GPPs and stuff. So we're not too worried about it.
Yeah, we'll mention a couple of relevant injuries as we are heading into this Sunday. Colts Frank Wright says running back Jonathan Taylor is out this Sunday. So that does open up a little bit more value there at the running back position with Deion Jackson. A little bit of intrigue there. Obviously had the 10 targets or 10 receptions 2 weeks ago when he did end up getting the bulk of the carries when Hines was pulled from the game early based off of that huge hit that he had, and Jackson ended up being the primary ball carrier there. That could be in the cards for him this week, and I think he's coming in there right around like 5,100 or something. But it's a tough matchup, so something that you may have to think about. Bad injury luck for the Chargers. Keenan Allen, hamstring, and wide receiver Mike Williams with that ankle. Tight end Donald Parham Jr. with the hamstring are all out this week. So that condenses that passing attack there for Justin Herbert. You are looking at Eckler, obviously, as another strong play. He's been removed from the injury report, so he's a full go. And Palmer is going to be back this week and expected to be really the wide receiver one there for the Chargers. And they're going up against a juicy matchup in my Atlanta Falcons, who have just been giving it up all season long to the quarterback position, to the running back position, and to the wide receiver position. So I like Herbert stacks this week. I like being able to condense that. Yeah, Eckler, they got him priced up, and rightfully so, because this is a sweet matchup in the dude to baller.
Yeah, I was going to say real quickly, I won't spend too much time on it, but it opens up some value. You know what I mean? Like, as far as wide receivers go, Josh Palmer's 5,100. The guys underneath of him that might play, DeAndre Carter, he's coming in at 4,300. Bandy's 3,500. So there's all this value. Granted, the ownership's going to be probably absolutely ridiculous, but sometimes you don't fade your chalk. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's just such a good matchup against those Falcons. So we'll get into that a little bit more. The Panthers have ruled out running back Chuba Hubbard this Sunday, so that's leaving Donta Foreman to be the primary ball carrier once again. And we saw what happened, when he was put into that situation a week ago. So he might be back in the lineup again this week. They've priced him up a little bit, though, because of the 3-touchdown performance that he had. So I'm a little bit less bullish on him this week. Saints wide receiver Michael Thomas placed on IR. RIP, pour one out for Michael Thomas. What could have been, what should have been, what won't be this season. You can pretty much drop him in most formats, and I won't be playing any more Michael Thomas this year in DFS. I mean, even if he comes back, when are you going to trust him? Ravens wide receiver Rashad Bateman will undergo season-ending Liz Frank surgery. John Harbaugh announced this week. So Bateman, pour one out for our guy Bateman. A lot of my best ball teams are going to be affected by that. And Lamar is going to continue to not have any decent wide receivers there. Devin Duvernay and DeMarcus Robinson, James Prochet, all those guys are going to continue to get looks, and I won't have any of it. So Mark Andrews to the fucking moon if he can get healthy, maybe likely. That's a sticky situation this week. The Baltimore Ravens, they have all these guys that are questionable, and I've got a couple of leagues where I need to know, am I going to have Mark Andrews because I couldn't get likely on waivers, or is Kenyon Drake going to be the viable choice there at running back? Well, I've got options that I might have to plug in this Sunday before I find that out. So it's a tricky situation. The Baltimore Ravens have been giving me a headache all week.
Yeah. I don't think the Ravens have to worry too much. They're going to sign OBJ pretty soon. Odell Beckham Jr. will join that team at some point this season. But for this week, it's looking very tough. I mean, you don't really know what to do, especially in the season-long leagues where we're waiting until the last minute to try to make a decision when, we need to add guys, drop guys, and things like that. So it's certainly tough. Yeah, sad for Rashad Bateman with the way this team's looking, man. They're one of the better teams in the AFC, so it sucks for him. I hate to see that for that kid.
Nate, let's a lot of action during that trade deadline this week. I mean, that was exciting times. If you had the cell phone in your pocket, it was buzzing pretty regularly all day long, and it was nonstop. And a couple of meaningful moves. We're going to talk about a couple of them.
Yeah, the sleeper app had me feeling definitely like Adam Schefter all day, man. So the first thing we're going to talk about is the one that broke my heart a little bit, but I also understand at the same time as a realist. The Lions dealt our Pro Bowl tight end TJ Hawkinson to the division rival Minnesota Vikings. Move that I'm sure Rusty / Devin liked quite a bit, but it was in swap for draft picks. And I do get why the Lions did this. They owed him some money at the end of this year. They're definitely in a rebuilding process. They have the worst record in the NFL. So was Hawkinson worth, repaying and being a part of a piece in Detroit? I think that the case could be made, yes. But at the same time, he hasn't necessarily lived up to that number 8 pick, in the first round. So he's a great player, great guy, very entertaining. He's so funny, man, even off the field. So wish Hawkinson all the best in Minnesota, even though it's within the division. Within the division again, Bears acquired Chase Claypool from the Steelers for a second rounder. I'm very happy about this. We've seen what young quarterbacks can do with weapons around them. And Justin Fields certainly needs some help in Chicago. It's looking grim. Bringing in Chase Claypool, I do not think necessarily fixes all the wrongs there. I think that there's still going to be, they still need to bring somebody else in, but Claypool certainly can be a very good piece to that puzzle. Dolphins acquired Bradley Chubb for a first-round pick. I think this is a great move for the Dolphins. Chase Edmonds goes to the Broncos in this deal. But more importantly, the Dolphins are saying we're confident that we can win a Super Bowl this year. You know what I mean? By making this move, they're putting all their pieces into this year, similar to the way the Rams did just last year. So I understand the Dolphins doing this. I like it a lot. That defense cannot get sacks. They cannot put pressure on quarterbacks. Add Bradley Chubb to the mix, and I think you can get it done. 49ers send veteran Jeff Wilson Jr., as I said, to the Dolphins for a draft pick. That move, I don't know the impact Jeff Wilson really has. I'm kind of curious to see what you think. That Miami running attack's been pretty shit this year. Jeff Wilson Jr. has done well so far this year. He's averaged, a decent amount of yards per carry and things like that. But I don't necessarily think he comes in here and gets, 25 carries a game. What are your thoughts quickly on Jeff Wilson in Miami?
I think he's a better backup for Mostert.
He's a capable back.
Yeah, I mean, obviously with McDaniels and the San Fran pipeline there, he's familiar with both of these backs. He likes having that as a 1-2 punch. Mostert's a guy who's getting older at this point. They don't want him to shoulder this load. They can't expect him to all season long. So who better than the guy Jeff Wilson to bring in there, let him spell some touches, and a guy that he believes that can handle the load if Mostert were to go down and potentially miss some time. So I think it's a good depth piece for these Dolphins who seem to be loading up for a run here.
Yeah, absolutely, man. And more news, Falcons deal suspended wide receiver of your Atlanta Falcons, Calvin Ridley, now at the Jacksonville Jaguars, giving Trevor Lawrence just some more weapons to pair with Christian Kirk and them guys down in Jacksonville. Steelers deal for Commanders' disgruntled cornerback William Jackson. And the Bills add to that potent offense, acquiring pass-catching running back Nyheim Hines from the Indianapolis Colts. A move that did surprise me a little bit.
Yeah, I was a little surprised by that one too, but the Bills obviously, even during the offseason, were in the market for a pass-catching specialist running back. And, now they have one in Hines who is top 3 when it comes to that respective trait here in the NFL. So I think it's going to be interesting. It's great for the Bills. It's more of a headache for that backfield. Obviously, if you were riding with Singletary, at this point, you can't feel great about it when you already weren't feeling too good about it. So it muddies that water. Another weapon, though, for Josh Allen, and I've got a bunch of Josh Allen shares that don't mind just having an extra weapon there.
Yeah, absolutely. So I wanted to ask you a couple questions before we move on into the main part of the show. I want to ask you what the most surprising trade was. For me, it was Calvin Ridley going to Jacksonville. I think, if Ridley is reinstated by a certain date, the Falcons will receive a 2023 5th-round pick. If he's not reinstated by this said date, they will receive a 2023 6th-round pick. After that, Atlanta receives a 2024 selection that could escalate all the way to a second-rounder if he reaches a certain milestone. So this is like an incentive-based contract in a way. But I'm just surprised from this by like a logistical standpoint. Atlanta giving away Calvin Ridley, basically saying we want no ties to him at this point. This guy is still very, very talented, and I think they traded him for way too cheap. So, Dan, what was the most surprising trade for you post-trade deadline? pre-trade deadline. Sorry.
I mean, the Ridley thing, yes, it was a surprise, but not really. We kind of knew that the Falcons and Ridley had kind of been butting heads even before the suspension came about. So there was rumors of him getting moved a while back. So it wasn't a huge surprise to see him move. I was surprised by the TJ Hawkinson to the Vikings. Obviously, the Lions did put good capital in him, but as you mentioned, somebody's going to have to pay him. It made perfect sense, though, right as Irv was going on IR. The Vikings are, trying to make a push here themselves, and losing Irv would have left a huge hole at the tight end position. It's a great move for a team that is trying to win now. Yeah, they may end up having to pay him, but they may not. They might just really be pushing all their chips in. Obviously, Adam Thielen's not going to get any younger. Kirk Cousins, is on his way out. It's now or never really for these Minnesota Vikings. Dalvin Cook, obviously, too, reaching that running back cliff age. Minnesota Vikings have to go all in this year, and getting TJ Hawkinson there, who's a quality player, and I think can, blossom in this Vikings offense as well. Now he hasn't had a Justin Jefferson necessarily on the team with him there, but St. Brown is a elite talent himself. He's no Justin Jefferson by any means, but I'm just saying, we don't really quite know what kind of workload TJ Hawkins is going to step into, but I do think that he is in a good position, potentially even a better position than he was there in Detroit.
Yeah, it does make sense because the Vikings are leading the NFC North, you know what I mean? So there's a playoff push there, and there's no teams, Packers, Lions, Bears, none of them want to seem to come and try to challenge the Vikings. We're all just going to fucking lose the rest of the game. So I do understand the move by Minnesota. One more quick question. Who won, so to speak? Who won the trade? For me, I went back and forth on this. I did kind of lean Ravens defense at first and the pieces that they added and how good that team looks, but I ended up going with Kyle Shanahan, Christian McCaffrey, and the San Francisco 49ers. I do feel like McCaffrey, he went to Stanford. He's back home now. He's in California. He feels comfortable. I feel like hopefully Kyle Shanahan and the way that he uses his running backs is not favorable for fantasy by any means, but it could prolong Christian McCaffrey's career for another 10 years. You know what I mean? He's already been dealing with injuries the past 3 seasons. They are nagging. They are killing it. They're not killing him, but they're hurting his progress. They're hurting his playing time. The way Kyle Shanahan uses players, Christian McCaffrey can certainly get subbed in for the big plays, be utilized where he needs to be utilized. And for an NFL purpose, this is great for Christian McCaffrey. For a fantasy purpose, I think it'll end up proving maybe not the best. He did great last week, so I could be obviously wrong. But I think that Kyle Shanahan, Christian McCaffrey, San Francisco were the winners at the trade deadline. What about you, Dan?
I really like the Dolphins push, them getting Bradley Chubb there. I think it was a great move for that defense. Obviously, the offense, when Tua is healthy, is clicking at this time, and it's really their defense that we saw, just this past year, even was looking like a top-notch defense. Well, to get a guy like Bradley Chubb there in the clubhouse and him to be a threat there on the D-line each and every week. So I really like the Dolphins pushing. Again, we talked about the Jeff Wilson coming in to secure a little bit more depth there for that backfield as well. So I thought the Dolphins did really good. I also will mention the Kadarius Toney trade. I do like that trade for the Chiefs.
He looked so good in practice today. What happened to his hamstring? I thought it was fucking banged up, man. He was running all over the place. All magic, dude. The miracles of NFL football. Oh my god.
I think him and Kenny Galladay had a locker right next to each other.
I couldn't believe that when I watched how good the routes he was running. I'm like, yeah, he looks fine to me.
Yeah, I don't know how much of a consistent option that he'll be at all this year.
Yeah,
but it's intriguing for this Chiefs team that is trying to load up potentially next year. This wide receiver room is going to be wide open this next year. So who knows? Kadarius Toney potentially in one of the lanes there could find himself in a great position as early as 2023. So definitely interesting. I can't be mad. I was buying this offseason in the hopes that he could come out and be the electricity that we saw in a limited fashion this past year. So, while yes, he's not going to be the wide receiver one for the New York Giants, he might be something, and it's tied to Pat Mahomes and that Chiefs offense. So brighter days are ahead for Kadarius Toney, and I'm all right with it.
Yeah, I don't know, man. I think the Chiefs they've got to be regretting letting go of Tyreek Hill and not paying that man. But yeah, I obviously wish the best for everybody involved. How do you feel about moving into our positional pricing, Dan?
Yeah, man, let's talk about it. This is a interesting slate this week. As I mentioned, not a ton of quarterbacks that I'm in love with this week, but the running back position seems to be flooded, and I think that is going to be the bread and butter of the slate. You're going to see a lot of 3 running back builds this week because the wide receivers that we feel great about are kind of priced up. There's really only a couple of running backs that are really priced up that are in good spots, and I think those guys might be a good way to get some leverage this week. But we're going to talk about all that. Let's get into it. Starting out with the quarterback position, as per usual. Nate, who are you talking about this week?
Yeah, I'm going back to the well, man. Repeatedly back to the well. I'm going with Tua Tagovailoa of the Miami Dolphins. They are in Chicago, something that does worry me in November, but Tua did not disappoint last week in his matchup against my very abysmal Detroit Lions. He scored 32 DraftKings points, as we mentioned. That was his second game going over 30 points. He scored 42 in week 2, as we remember, against Baltimore Ravens. And he's clearly back to full health here, we all hope. That big score has raised his price. The Bears are not quite as good of a matchup as the Lions were, obviously. Bears are kind of middle of the road as far as, against passers, but he has 300-plus yards and multiple touchdown upside nearly every week with the elite weapons that he has in Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle. Those 2 receivers make Tua Tagovailoa a very, very feasible DFS play for me. Just the simple fact that how good, they are in themselves. So I'm going to go back to Tua here at 6,700. As far as exposure goes, I'm not necessarily sure how much exposure I'll have. It'll probably depend on his ownership come Sunday, but I'll certainly have Tua in some GPP entries.
Yeah, no, I like Tua again this week. We were kind of on him this past week. It worked out well. Again, I like Tyreek Hill and I like Jalen Waddle in this matchup. So give me Tua again this week for 6,700.
He's coming in at 6% projection right now, so not too bad.
Guy I'll talk about, I already mentioned once earlier tonight, and that's Justin Herbert. The Chargers coming in at 7,200 this week, and he hasn't been the stud that many of us were hoping for this season. He's currently dealing with a banged-up receiving core, as we mentioned, and the matchup against my Falcons is just simply too good to ignore. The Falcons are currently giving up the 3rd most fantasy points per game to opposing quarterbacks, the 2nd most schedule-adjusted fantasy points per game, and the most passing yards per game. So everything about the Falcons has just been a green light. If you have any guys that are playing the Falcons, you start them. Justin Herbert this week, I like 7,200. He's averaging 27.7 fantasy points per game in his 19 career wins, and the Chargers have a 61% win probability this week against my Falcons. So, if he can even sniff 25 points this week there at 7,200. That's really what we're looking for. That's that 3 times value. So I like Justin Herbert in this matchup. Again, I mentioned the condensed options there with Eckler, Everett, and Palmer really being the guys that I'm interested in there if you're going to build any kind of a stack. The bring back option for that is a little bit challenging. Obviously, if Cordell Patterson ends up playing, I think he would be intriguing, but I would be a little wary of him coming back his first week back coming off of IR. Al Geyer, yes, he kind of got there for us this past week. Had a little bit of luck there, falling into the end zone there at the end, towards the end of the game. So I don't feel like you need to have a bring back option there if you are going to stack up Herbert in these Chargers.
Yeah, so since week 2, Justin Herbert has scores of 14.5, 24 points in week 4 against Houston. Obviously a good matchup there. 14 against Cleveland, 9 against Denver, and 20 last week against Seattle. So the only thing that worries me about Herbert is the price tag and the limited weapons. And, he's only broke 20 fantasy points twice out of the last 5 weeks. So, I mean, while that average isn't terrible, it does worry me a little bit at a $7,200 price tag.
Yeah, no,
that's all I'll say.
I definitely understand that. The Falcons rank worst in passing yards per game with 318, second worst in schedule-adjusted fantasy points per game allowed to quarterbacks, and the second worst in pressure rate over expectation. So it can't get any better of a matchup for Justin Herbert. Yes, he's been down, and I think his ownership will be down because of it. Eckler's priced up this week pretty much So if Eckler does end up being popular, which he should be, and nobody's going to play Justin Herbert, I'm going to go that way.
All right, that's fair. I accept that objection. That was won very well. The guy I'm going to talk about is Aaron Rodgers, quarterback of the Green Bay Packers. Speaking of guys that haven't done shit this year, I'm bringing up a quarterback that really hasn't done really a whole lot outside of scoring basically in the teens the whole season. The problem with the thing with it is that Aaron Rodgers is playing my Detroit Lions this week. What the Detroit Lions tend to do is give up a ton of points to quarterbacks and a ton of points to their wide receivers. Now, I don't know if this trend will continue. The Rodgers and the Packers certainly have not looked like the Dolphins. We've seen Dak actually come back from an injury in week 7 against the Lions and not necessarily do, amazing. But again, he was coming back from an injury. But Rodgers is averaging just 14.7 DK fantasy points per game, but every week that we see the Lions opposing quarterbacks, they put up solid scores. Again, including that 32.2 last week against Tua. So I think Aaron Rodgers is going to go under-owned. I'll take a peek at his ownership here after I let you take over talking. But 12%. Thanks, Dan. That's maybe a little bit high because I'm not super confident in Rodgers. I just want to throw it out there that Rodgers is a viable GPP option. And I'll talk about a couple of his wide receivers later as well against Detroit Lions defense that just fired their DB coach, and we can't stop fucking anybody. So Rodgers should be able to have a bounce back week against Detroit.
Yeah, no, I think if he is going to have a get right game anytime soon, it is this week. But like you mentioned, I don't feel great about it. Guy I'm going to talk about next, I actually feel really good about, and I'm surprised when looking at his projected ownership over at fantasypoints.com that it's only coming in at 3% this week. It's a guy that I'm considering for cash builds. It's a guy that I'm considering for GPP builds, and that's my dude, Justin Fields, who DraftKings is giving absolutely zero respect to, coming in at 5,300 this week, and he's been pretty damn good these last few weeks, ranking 5th in fantasy points per game over the last 4 games. He has scored at least 17 fantasy points in 4 straight now, including back-to-back top 5 finishes. Over this 4-week sample, Fields ranks as the overall QB2 or as the QB6 by fantasy points per game. The 4 has been there each and every week. He now has 7 games of 8 carries or more this season, and he's exceeded 60 rushing yards in each of his last 3. I like the matchup this week against the Miami Dolphins that is allowing the 7th most schedule of adjusted fantasy points per game to the quarterback position. Even I built one earlier that was a Justin Fields at the quarterback position build with Tyreek and or Waddle there on a bring back option for just a mini stack in this game. You don't want to go Tua, maybe Tua Waddle or Tua Hill is going to be a little too popular. Justin Fields with Tyreek Hill on the bring back, maybe a Cole Kmet down there at 3K to complete that stack. But I love Justin Fields this week, and seeing him at sub 5% projected ownership, I was assuming he would be higher. Again, I'm considering Justin Fields in cash this week, and to get him at 3% means I can play my guy across multiple contests.
I really liked what I liked most about you bringing up Fields was that kind of like super contrarian stack that you can do with bringing Justin Fields back, like as the bring back on the opposing team. That's something that a lot of teams or a lot of DFS guys are not going to do. So that stood out to me when you said that, man. That's a super good idea for GPPs. I really like that.
Any other QBs you want to talk about before we head into the running back position?
No, I think we're good. We might throw a couple guys at you on Sunday morning on Twitter, so be sure to check us out there. But for now, I think we can move on to running backs. Running back, I'm going to talk about right off the bat, going back to my Detroit Lions and the Green Bay Packers matchup against them is Aaron Jones. He comes in at 7,400 with a projected ownership of 19%, according to fantasy points. Jones will continue not to be a guy that you're, necessarily 100% confident in, with A.J. Dillon eating up nearly half the running back snaps in Green Bay, for Green Bay, I should say, But a few things are working in Aaron Jones' favor. First of all, the Lions are the worst defense in football. We have already said this. Jones does the bulk of the pass work, 180 routes compared to Dillon's 97, so more, nearly double there. and his workload has trended upward. 59% of the share of running back attempts and 18% target share over the last 3 weeks. So he's trending in the right direction. The floor is considerably low for what he costs, but the upside is massive against the Detroit Lions. If they can move the ball effectively, you know what I'm saying? If the Lions can keep pace with Green Bay is going to have to throw more. I think you'll see a lot more Aaron Jones running routes, which we have seen as of late. So this is going to be game script dependent. Again, it's a GPP play only, and 7,400 is not necessarily cheap, to be honest with you. So again, GPPs, I would avoid him in cash, but I will have some Aaron Jones exposure this week. I think that there's a solid chance he has a 10-point game or a 28, 30-point game, something like that.
Yeah, no, I like Aaron Jones this week, and I really want to get up to him. It's just tough. There's so many running backs there in that mid 6K range that I like this week. But maybe Aaron Jones won't end up being so popular. But again, it's just that matchup. But getting up there to 7,400, it's tough to do on this slate. There's not a lot of extra money to be had unless you are playing a guy like Justin Fields and putting the tight end position. So do what I do, and you can get up to an Aaron Jones. A couple of the other popular running backs on this slate, Travis Etienne is going to be super popular, probably the most popular play on this slate. So Nate, let's talk about him for a minute. Definitely a guy you want to consider in cash options. And if you are going to get him into a GPP build, just make sure you correlate and get a couple of guys that are going to be a lot less owned, because he's hovering right around 25% projected ownership right now, which does lead the slate just ahead of Josh Jacobs coming in at 23% and Ramondre Stevenson coming in at 23%.
Yeah, so ATN is absolutely chalk, and that's to be expected off of, how he's trended upward lately. And he still remains, sub 6,500. So he's still on the cheaper side of the running backs, somewhere where you can go and save a little bit of money. While it's only just a one-game sample size, it does look promising for Travis Etienne since the Jacksonville Jaguars traded a very underrated running back, in my opinion, of James Robinson to the New York Jets. Etienne failed the top 14 carries in a game with Robinson on the roster and saw 24 carries in Week 8 against the Broncos. This is a game script thing that I don't expect to continue, and I honestly would not like. I would rather see Travis Etienne getting 15 carries and 7-8 targets if I had it my way. I don't think he's a workhorse running back necessarily handling 25 carries a game. So for his long-term health, I prefer it the other way around. But he's adding an additional 3 targets per game. Given his involvement with the passing game, even in a negative game script, it shouldn't hinder his opportunities too much, which makes him more appealing. The Jaguars are just 1.5 underdogs as of earlier this week, though. So we could see another 20-plus carry performance if this game stays close. I, again, hope that they use him in other ways, but the Raiders rank 18th in rushing defense DVOA. They're not very good against the run. They're not really a great defense overall. So I think Travis Etienne's a great play, but seeing his ownership, it will be a cash play only, probably for me, maybe like 1 or 2 GPPs, but mostly cash for me this week. Still a solid play, though.
Yeah, no, I like him this week. Another guy we mentioned, Ramondre Stevenson, 6,200. He's coming in at 23% this week, Nate.
Yeah.
And he took advantage of Damian Harris being banged up with that hamstring injury. And we don't know if Harris is going to play for sure or not this week. He's still questionable as of right now. Obviously, if Harris doesn't play, Ramondre Stevenson becomes a really good play. I mean, he's been producing even with Harris in the mix, but I do like Stevenson this week, especially if Harris does not play.
He's one of my favorite plays. I really hate that his ownership's over 20% because he was such a sneaky play like the last 2 to 3 weeks, even coming into the year, like in the SOD chat, we were talking to Ramondre Stevenson, like this is his year. I know Rusty was, I was, a couple other guys were, but so early in the year, we had high hopes. He did kind of well. And then, we started to see his numbers go up and up. So the last 3 to 4 weeks, we were able to sneak him in there and when everybody else wasn't, but it's not a secret anymore. So his ownership's getting up there to chalk. He's basically a chalk running back at this point, which is a bummer at $6,200, man. But, congrats to him. He's a great, great player.
Our buddy Gymnastic in the comments there did ask about James Robinson as far as the Jets bringing him over. And Robinson is in the final year of his rookie contract, and he will be a restricted free agent after the season, meaning that the Jets will have an opportunity to retain his rights for 2023, but he could potentially seek a new team in free agency. One more running back that I want to mention is Donta Foreman, running back there for the Carolina Panthers. I mentioned him a little earlier. Yeah. He's coming in at $6K this week, but Hubbard has been ruled out again. So, Foreman rushed 26 times for 118 yards and 3 touchdowns when he got the spot start with Hubbard being out last time. So, again, this is a little bit of a tougher matchup this weekend. They've priced him up to $6K. There's a lot of running backs I like more. We just talked about them, and Ramondre Stevenson and Travis Etienne. All these guys are really in that same price point there for Foreman. So even though he might be set up for another successful outing, he's coming in at around 6% as of right now, which is obviously a lot lower than those other guys, but rightfully so. We like those other guys substantially more and expect them to carry their value a little bit further than Foreman. We don't expect Foreman to get 3 touchdowns again this week.
Yeah, we know our guy Debro over there at Fantasy Pros is very high on Deontay Foreman, and rightfully so. Seeing that 6% ownership, I think I pushed a little bit of extra chips in this week, man. That's a solid projection. If it stays that low, I don't think it does, but if it does, hell yeah.
No, I think once people, the cycle
the
Hubbard's out, and then they get to look in Foreman. Well, what did he do this past week? Oh, he rushed for $118 and ended up falling in the end zone 3 times. This guy's a stud. I'm going to play him.
Surprise.
Pump the brakes. All right, Nate, let's talk about Canva for a minute.
Yeah, so Sons of Dynasty / Sons of DFS we are both partnering with Canva now this year. It's a move that we just made last week. It became official kind of right before last week's show. So basically, Canva, you see these graphics on the screen. You're not going to see graphics like this anywhere else. We get props on these graphics day in and day out each week. So props to Brother Matt on the hard work he puts into these. It's not easy to do. It's certainly not easy. He is very skilled at what he does. So Canva, getting a subscription with Canva will get you halfway there. But if you sign up with our affiliate code, you can get a free consultation with Brother Matt where he can offer you advice. He's offered me advice, and it's obviously led to better graphics for me. He can help you to make your podcast look good, make it look clean, because you want to look clean. You want your thumbnails to look clean. You want your overlays to look clean. It's all part of the process with making a successful podcast, in my opinion. So if you use our affiliate code with Canva, free consultation with Brother Matt, he'll hook you up just right.
Yeah, love Canva, love everything about it. It's been instrumental for us as far as the overlays and the thumbnails of the YouTube and just general content, graphic work in general. Canva has been great for us as a team. We are all able to collaborate on it, and the sky's the limit for what you're capable of doing on there. So we couldn't be happier to be partnered up with them moving forward. Nate, let's talk about some wide receivers. Me, this is my bread and butter on a weekly basis. I love the wide receiver position. Let's talk about him.
Yeah, so I'm going right back to Tyreek Hill. We've talked about him earlier. This guy is a generational NFL player. He's in a league of his own talent-wise. Tyreek Hill has been absolutely ridiculous this season. He's currently on pace for over 2,000 receiving yards, which would break Calvin Johnson's NFL record and break my heart. But I would be extremely happy for Tyreek Hill if that were to happen. He's been worth every penny that the Dolphins have paid for him when they made him the highest paid wide receiver in the league. For fantasy purposes, he is the overall wide receiver 1 on the year and has finished in the top 25 in all but week 1. Hill and the Dolphins take on the Bears in week 9, as we mentioned, in Chicago, who have been a stingy passing defense, so to speak, in number 11. But so far this year, they just allowed Dak Prescott to carve them up, So I think that Tyreek Hill is a great play. As you mentioned, DraftKings has failed to price him up over that 8,500 mark. I feel like I've seen him at 8,600. I'm probably wrong though. It was probably 8,500 has been his highest price all year, but either way, it's $100. And it was worth every penny for the Miami Dolphins to sign Tyreek Hill. It's worth every penny for you to play him at 8,500 against Chicago.
Yeah, man, Tyreek Hill's been a stud this week, and they're just going to keep feeding him that ball. So I love him. He's one of my preferred pay-up options
He
there
is
at the wide
awesome.
receiver position. But I have one other one, and he's coming in right at that same price point, but 8,600. That's my guy, Justin Jefferson, Minnesota Vikings. We all know Justin Jefferson's been an absolute star in the league since the day he walked in here, and his dominance in 2022 is continuing. He's averaging 21.2 fantasy points per game. Well, this week he gets a juicy matchup against those Commanders that have allowed the ninth most fantasy points per game to opposing wide receivers this season. Washington has given up the fourth most deep passing yards per game. And that's just one more reason that I like Justin Jefferson this week. He's getting the work. I don't think a lot of people are going to want to pay up for him this week, but he is definitely in consideration for one of the preferred pay up options, coming in at around 10% this week. So that hopefully it doesn't get any higher than that, because I like Justin Jefferson. I like that game. Terry McLaurin, I think, is a quality bring back. If you can get Terry and Justin into the same lineup, I think it'll pay dividends for you this weekend.
Yeah, Justin Jefferson is just an amazing athlete, man. I love playing him every week that I can. 8,600, I feel confident in his abilities this week. So you'll never really see me hate on a Justin Jefferson play in DFS or in, season-long fantasy football. The kid is phenomenal. One of my favorite players in the league. I want to mention a guy, again, that I did mention last week, DJ Moore, wide receiver of the Carolina Panthers. His price did not come up too much. Was it 5,800 last week, Dan, or 55? Do you remember? You're muted, dog. Or your mic's off. Either way, we can't hear Dan. I believe it was close to...
Yeah, I think it was right there in the 55, 56, 57 range. 58 maybe, And 25, 35 come down the back line. Do we have 25? And sold DJ Moore 5,800 against the Cincinnati Bengals.
You heard it here first, folks. The post-Christian McCaffrey, Panthers era has been an offensive resurgence lately, which is it's crazy to see. What you want to see both sides of that trade do well, but it's been largely on the shoulders of DJ Moore and Deontay Foreman. Moore has finally resumed his high floor, fantasy status, seeing double-digit targets per game and over 65 yards in 2 straight games. He gets another matchup here that is good with the Bengals, who just lost their top cornerback on their Monday Night Football loss to the Browns. With PJ Walker looking Moore's way, very, very, very often he is a high floor option in your fantasy lineups. And again, he is still sub 6K at 5,800. I think by the end of the year, he's 67, 68, maybe $7,000. I think, he's going to keep getting these targets with Christian McCaffrey gone.
Yeah, no, DJ Moore, I soaked up a lot of best ball shares in the beginning of the year, was brutal. But as of lately, he's been paying it off a little bit more. So I like him again this week. Another guy I like this week is I'm going back to our guy, Amon-Ra St. Brown. He's coming in at 6,600 this week and projected for 11% ownership as of right now. And after getting off to a hot start and then battling through some injuries the last few weeks, but he is still averaging 11.2 targets per game. The price tag just feels a little bit cheap for me. Obviously, TJ Hawkinson now out the door as well, just opening up more opportunity. It's almost like a repeat of what we saw at the end of last year, when there's just not a lot of other warm bodies there for the Detroit Lions, and they're going to funnel targets to Amon-Ra, so 11.2 targets per game, 6,600. I'll take that. And again, you want to do a little mini stack there with Aaron Jones and Amon-Ra St. Brown. I like that call right there.
I love the call, man. I think the problem is defenses are just zeroing in on this guy now. They're double covering him, and he's not Calvin Johnson. He's not 6'5", 236. So he's obviously super talented. He's physical, but if that double coverage could let up, the TJ Hawkinson leaving could really hurt Amon-Ra St. Brown, man. It could just allow defenses to focus more on Amon-Ra. So I think it'll be interesting to see this week. I'm not sure how much exposure I'll have, if I'm being honest with you, but we will see kind of what happens. Wide receiver I'm going to talk about is Romeo Doubs. I hope that Devin is still watching as we give a shout out to Romeo Doubs. Green Bay Packers, he's 5,300 on DraftKings. His projected ownership, according to our fantasy points projections, is 10%. As mentioned with the Dolphins and Tyreek Hill, the Lions passing defense is complete shit. So they get that matchup this week. And Dobbs is arguably the Green Bay Packers' number one wideout. He ran 4.3 more routes per game than anyone in the 3 contests prior to Allen Lazard's Week 8 absence. So the Lions have allowed 4 100-yard receivers in the past 4 weeks. And that's 100%. That's 100% of the receivers going for 100 yards. So if there's ever a week for Romeo Doubs to have that breakout week, it certainly looks good, man. Even I almost feel like playing Romeo Doubs without Aaron Rodgers is still a very good thing. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, no, I like Dubs this week.
Someone's going to get 100 yards.
Yeah, and it might be Coach's guy Toure or whatever his name is. He's bottom of the barrel 3K this week. I built a lineup where I was scraping at the bottom, and I plugged him in there, and it didn't feel terrible, to be honest with you. So
it's a great call.
Just another option there if you're looking to get different. I mean, Dobbs is coming in at 10% right now. Toure is going to end up being 1%, maybe 2% or something there. So, just another option to consider in those GPP builds. Let's talk about some tight ends, Nate. Not really a whole lot of sexiness here in this tight end slate here. So what do? We go with what's comfortable, the comfort foods down there at the bottom in the 3K range. That's where we're heading. And we're going to start it out with Evan Ingram there for the Jacksonville Jaguars. He's coming in at 3,300 this week, and he's quietly emerged as a consistent option there at the tight end position. Over the last 4 weeks, Evan Ingram ranks 3rd in targets per game with 7.5. 2nd in expected fantasy points per game, 6th in fantasy points per game, and 2nd in total receiving yards. So, quietly, Evan Ingram is becoming a consistent option there at the tight end position. And, Trevor Lawrence likes to lean on him these last few weeks, 3,300. Evan Ingram feels like a quality play.
Yeah, tight end feels gross. I feel like I'm going to need a shower after this segment. So I don't think you can go wrong with any of these guys because we have to find some value somewhere. We're going to do it at tight end as we usually do. And Ingram has been, consistent at that price tag of 3,300. A couple guys I'm going to mention is Noah Fant and Will Dissey, both tight ends of the Seattle Seahawks. Fant comes in at 2,900 and Dissey comes in at 3,000. Both Fant and Dissey play 70% of the snaps and on split targets. Unfortunately, the target pie has not been robust as Fant has 29 while Dissey has received 22 on the season. One of them could hit this weekend. Which one? You might want to pick up a D12 and roll that dice, and just try to see what you come up with. But the fact of the matter is they're playing the Arizona Cardinals, who are 31st in DVOA and have allowed the 2nd most fantasy points and 2nd most yards, and are tied for the most touchdowns at the position. So you play your tight ends against the Arizona Cardinals. So one of these guys should be really good. The question is which one, you know what I mean? DFS is gambling and you might have to gamble on one of these guys.
Yeah, I like those guys. Noah Fant is the more popular one, coming in at about 5%, while Dissey is sub 2%. So obviously, if you're going to lean towards a smaller field tournament, Noah Fant might be the option. But if you're going for a milli maker, I think Will Dissey is going to be the better play there. So one more guy I'll mention is Cole Kmet. He's coming in at 3K this week. Obviously hasn't had a ton of volume there for the Bears, but I like Justin Fields this week. Not really huge on bringing along any wide receivers this week, but Cole Kmet seems like a feasible option when I can take care of my tight end position there for the 3K mark and move on. Nate, couple of guys that we'll talk about there for a true punt. That's Brock Wright and James Mitchell, tight ends for the Detroit Lions. They're both coming in at 2,500 after the departure of TJ Hawkinson. Both of these guys are really just backup options that are now going to be kind of thrust into a starting role. We don't really know much about either of them other than they are going to be the fill-in options here for Jared Goff. What can you give us insights on these two guys? Which one's the better option for us if we're truly punting the position and only want to spend 2,500 here?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing I wanted to do with both these guys is steal your tight end punt of the week segment, which I successfully have done. But seriously though, Jared Goff targets his tight ends at one of the highest rates of all cornerbacks in the NFL. So Goff, TJ Hawkinson is gone. Amon-Ra St. Brown probably double covered. Josh Reynolds banged up. I can go on and on. We seen James Mitchell get his first ever catch last week. It was like for 32 yards, though, so it was a decent catch. But Brock Wright should be the go-to guy here, the guy they lean on. But this is going to give an opportunity for both guys to prove themselves. So nothing is known as of this point. But if you're again in a milli maker, you want to do something nuts, play one of these guys at 2,500. They are a minimum price, and they could come through with a touchdown very easily. Goff could throw a touchdown to this guy in the end zone. One of these guys. Super easily. So if you want to gamble, if you want to, aim for the stars, you've got a very credible option here in both Brock Wright and James Mitchell.
Yeah, man, I like those calls. Obviously, getting that opportunity, they're going to see potentially tight end one snaps there for Detroit, and anytime you can cut bottom of the barrel there, it's going to treat you right. Any other guys that you want to talk about here before we get ready to close it out? Again, this slate's not great. I think the more popular games are going to be Seahawks at Cardinals. The current over-under sitting at 49.5. Could be a popular game. And then as far as the afternoon games go, we only get 2 of them, I believe, this week. And Seahawks, Cardinals being one, Rams, Bucks being the other. But early games, there's not a whole lot. Raiders, Jaguars over under 48. Chargers, Falcons, as I mentioned, that's one that I kind of want to target there with 49.5 as the over under there. And Dolphins, Bears, I think is the other intriguing one. Packers, Lions there at 50 as well. So those are the main games that I'm looking at. Maybe a one-off or two off of some of these other games here, but all in all, not a great slate. I felt really good about last week's slate. This one I feel a little more unsure about. So I'll probably play a little bit lighter this week, but maybe when these – I always say that, and then come Sunday, I'm jamming in them, and I'm fucking jamming them.
All right. Okay. And the Mafia don't freak me out. No, that Packers-Lions game over under 50 points, man. So many cheap options. I mean, where do you start? So could be a place to look, man. I'm not confident at all, but you don't have to necessarily be confident to get lucky.
Yeah, that's for damn sure. And you should see my wife.
That's true. I mean, never mind. We'll talk about that later.
All right. I do want to just mention one more time that I highly encourage all of you guys to go check out fantasypoints.com today, because with Fantasy Points, you have access to the newest and best website in the industry for all of your season-long daily fantasy and NFL betting needs. Access to articles, live streams, podcasts, cheat sheets, community chat, online tools, and more, all available at your fingertips. It's the only subscription that you will need all football season long. Sign up today for Fantasy Points premium content using our promo code SUNS22. You can get 10% off there. So go check it out, because if you ride with Fantasy Points, you will score more in 2022 and beyond. Get paid. Get paid.
Yeah. We might be halfway through the year, but there's still another whole entire half of football to go. So do not be afraid to jump on the Fantasy Points train. It is far worth every penny that you will spend on it. And again, as Dan mentioned, you'll save money with our promo code. So highly, 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 highly encourage you to jump on there. There's more content that you can ever consume. There's more content than you can possibly consume ever.
If you don't believe me, go check it out for yourself. Right now, fantasypoints.com has free articles at their disposal. A new one that they've just started releasing, I think this is week 2, and it's the chart porn article. Jake Tribby and Scott and a couple of the other guys there have been really just churning out some content. That one is free this week, so you can go check it out this week. I looked at it earlier today. It's got a lot of banger information in there. They give you the charts and show you an edge right there. But not only that, just under the chart, each and every chart, they've kind of put a little review of what, not all of us are fucking smart guys that can stare at charts with all the different greens and reds and numbers and make sense of it all. So what do? They summarize underneath what all the main takeaways from each chart is. And that's beautiful. I love that. I fucking love that.
The Godfather.
No, forget about it. Forget about it.
I again want to give a big thanks to Canva for sponsoring this week's show. Again, The artwork that you see here is all done by Brother Matt, who is an exceptional editor and producer. He does all of his work with Canva. You can do the same work too. You can get with Brother Matt, get some advice, get some tips, and get his know-how, which is very, very important to making yourself look good and sharp. So we have our link available. I think it's in the description. If it's not, it'll be in the comments shortly after the show. So jump on that link, sign up for Canva, and get a free consultation with Brother Matt. Again, Brother Matt, I want to thank you for everything that you do, your hard work behind the scenes. I know that we're all very, very busy in this life that we have outside of fantasy, the most important thing. And we all try to make everything work. It's been a busy week for all of us. It's been a stressful week for all of us, but it's very, very fulfilling that we all get together on Friday night and we knock out this show and it goes well. So thank you, Brother Matt, for all that you do. Your work is phenomenal and appreciated. And ViridianGlobal.com for all Sons of Dynasty gear. You can get shirts like this, hats like the one Dan's wearing. Fantasy Points media stuff is available there. They got some dope-ass hoodies over there for Fantasy Points. So you can go to ViridianGlobal.com, get all the SOD and Fantasy Points gear that you could ever want.
Yeah, big shout out to our guy BZB. Big shout out to our guy Coach Craig Sports.
Yeah.
A big shout out to our guy Rusty Devin.
Yeah.
Jim up here in the comments. Gymnastic, man.
Yeah, thank you, Jim.
Appreciate
Thank
you,
Jim.
big dog, hanging out with us tonight. All you guys that were in here with us tonight, man. Each and every week. Appreciate you guys.
Why did Rusty say baby mama is the man? What the hell's going on?
I think baby mama is Brother Matt. I'm not sure what the significance is.
My bad.
But all right, guys. Hey, make sure you're subscribed on the YouTube. Leave us a rate and review there on the podcast listening device. And, you with us on YouTube tonight, hit the thumbs up, drop a comment down below. It helps us out a lot, and we appreciate it. So anything else, Nate, that you want to say before we close her out, bro?
Just echo what you said. Thank you, Rusty and Jimbo, for sticking it out throughout the show. Very much appreciated. Please drop us a like on the show. It goes a long, long ways. And if you want to do us a bigger favor, drop a sub. We're so close to 200. We want to hit 200 before the season's over. We are 10 away at this point. So share with your friends and your family. Let's get us to 200 before the season is out. Thank you, everybody that watched and is listening post-show. We appreciate you. Let's win some money in week 9.
Fucking A, man. He is Nate. I am Dan. Much love to everybody out there this evening. Yeah.